Education in Viking society was highly informal and deeply rooted in practical, everyday activities. Unlike the structured educational systems that would develop in later centuries, Viking education was based on direct experience and oral tradition. Children learned primarily through observation and participation in the daily tasks of their community. Practical learning. From a young age, Viking children were integrated into the work of their households and communities. Boys were taught the skills necessary for survival and success in their society. This included farming techniques, fishing methods, hunting, and combat skills. These lessons were often taught by their fathers or other male relatives. The training was hands-on, with boys learning to handle tools and weapons, care for livestock, and understand the cycles of planting and harvest. Similarly, girls were educated in the skills needed to manage a household. They learned cooking, weaving, sewing, and other domestic crafts from their mothers and other female relatives. These skills were essential for maintaining the home and supporting the family. Girls also learned to manage resources, such as food stores and textiles, which were crucial for the long winters. Storytelling and oral tradition. A central aspect of Viking education was storytelling. Elders played a crucial role in this, gathering the younger generation around the fire to recount tales of gods, heroes, and historical events. These stories were not only entertaining but also served as a means of preserving and transmitting the values, beliefs, and history of the Viking people. The sagas and eddas, though later written down, originated as oral traditions that were memorized and recited over generations. Storytelling helped inculcate a sense of identity and continuity within the Viking community. Through these narratives, children learned about their ancestors, moral lessons, and cultural norms. The exploits of gods like Odin and Thor, and heroes such as Sigurd and Ragnar Lodbrok, provided models of bravery, wisdom, and perseverance. The role of runes. In addition to oral tradition, the Vikings also utilized a writing system known as runes. The runic alphabet, or futhark, was comprised of characters that were often carved into stones, wood, and metal. Runes served multiple purposes in Viking society. They were used for inscriptions on memorial stones, known as runestones, which commemorated the deeds of the deceased and marked their graves. Runes were also used for more mundane purposes, such as labeling ownership of goods, making talismans, and documenting legal transactions. Learning to carve runes was considered a valuable skill. Rune carvers, or rune masters, were respected for their ability to create these inscriptions. This literacy in runes allowed the Vikings to preserve important information in a durable form. Runes have been found on various artifacts, from weapons to jewelry, indicating their widespread use. Blending oral and written traditions. The combination of oral and written traditions ensured the preservation and transmission of Viking knowledge. While storytelling provided a rich, living record of their cultural heritage, runes offered a way to document and formalize important information. This blend of traditions allowed the Vikings to maintain a cohesive cultural identity and pass on their knowledge effectively. In summary, education in Viking society was a dynamic process that involved practical experience, storytelling, and the use of runes. This multifaceted approach helped ensure that essential skills, cultural values, and historical knowledge were passed down through generations, contributing to the resilience and continuity of Viking culture. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content about the Norse civilization.